Hello, welcome to today's episode of The Weapons of War. And as usual, I'm your host, Eden Chronde. Previously, on this episode, we looked at this subject of the carbon markets or carbon credits. And I promise that I'll be back to tackle how the rush to net zero is going to reach your doorstep individually. But perhaps a recap for those that have not caught up yet on that previous episode that I made. We looked at the carbon markets and we noted that the carbon markets came from a concept called net zero. What is net zero? Net zero is a rush by all countries and organizations and companies to reach a place where the level of greenhouse emissions in the atmosphere, especially carbon dioxide, equals the mitigation measures that countries are putting in place. That say if a country is emitting 1 million tons of greenhouse emissions in the atmosphere to pollute the atmosphere, they also undertake mitigation measures like environmental conservation measures to curb the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So that reach a place of net zero. They want to achieve that by 2050. Therefore, they have put in place a vision or a mission of how to get there. They have put in place steps of how to get there. One of those steps was the creation of carbon credits. Therefore, what are carbon credits? Carbon credits were like carbon allowances they gave to individual countries or companies or industries that you should not pollute beyond this threshold. Say if your company, say Shell or KLM or Emirates, they will tell you that you are not supposed to pollute beyond this threshold in a year. Say, for example, they could give you 1 million carbon credits. That if whatever you do, you stick within this. Therefore, if you're Emirates and you have these so many routes you're flying, you have to ensure that whatever you're doing, you keep within that threshold you've been given. Otherwise, when they calculate and realize that, oh, you've reached 1.5 million tons of emissions, then you are in the gray area. Therefore, what does a company like Emirates do? It has to keep within either by chopping some of these routes or stopping any sort of growth or engage in environmental, conservation measures. And if you can't engage in environmental conservation measures, you look for someone who is engaged in environmental conservation measures to sell you those credits. So you'll notice that when this carbon credit concept was created for the companies and countries, there are people or companies that also said, okay, now if they have put this cap on these companies, on these countries, not to emit beyond the threshold, or else they'll shut down or reduce their production, or engage in environmental friendly, measures. The other company decided to do what? To invest. There are companies that decided to invest in environmental conservation measures. So when a company comes and invests in environmental conservation measures, it accumulates carbon credits that is not using. It has accumulated those carbon credits for what? For sale. For sale to who? To those who need it, who are polluting the environment, who are polluting the atmosphere, who are in need of carbon credits in order to keep production, in order to keep working. I'm KLM or I'm Shell. I produce at this capacity, but I'm running out of carbon credits. Yet I need to maintain my level of production. What do? I go and I buy from someone who has invested in environmental friendly activities and they have accumulated their credit. So they sell it to me. We looked at examples in Kenya. Okay. So that's how the carbon credit market came about. There is a net zero rush that we need to ensure that the carbon emissions we put in the atmosphere, we also have mitigation measures of removing that same carbon dioxide from the atmosphere so that we reach net zero. One of the effects of these carbon credits is that it slaps an extra cost on industries. How? Because an industry now has to, besides looking at the production side of things, now it has this operation cost of trying to mitigate the emissions. How? By investing in environmentally friendly activities. Now, that investment does not bring back money per se. It's an extra cost that does not bring back profit per se, tangible profit. Usually when companies incur extra operation costs, they hire an expert and they pay that expert top dollar. That expert is going to help them come up with a strategy, come up with something that will unblock a new cash flow, cash flow train. And then the company will make profit out of the investment in this expert. But now out of this investment in these environmentally friendly activities that the companies are being told to invest in heavily, companies are shouldering an extra cost that's not bringing tangible money. So what would that then mean? That would then mean that with this extra cost, the companies are going to slap it on you, the final consumer, that the goods that you consume are going to be more costly because the company is not going to shoulder that extra cost. They are also in the business to make profit. Then two, what will happen? Some companies will cut down on production. That you know what, to stick within this carbon credit that I was given, what do I need to do? I need to cut down on production. When they cut down on production, what happens? Laying off of some staff. So some employees will be laid off, hence leading to unemployment. When they cut down on production, what happens next? They are producing less supply. But you know the demand is still constant up here, but the supply is little. When the supply is low and the demand is high, what will happen? High prices. High prices of goods because too much demand chasing very few goods leads to high prices, artificial inflation, or manufactured or engineered inflation. And therefore, the poor won't be able to afford certain essential commodities or services. It will be the rich. And then what else could happen? Some people may be like, some companies may be like, you know what, it no longer makes economic sense for me to remain in production. What happens next? They close shop. When they close shop, again, jobs are lost. We saw the example of Australia. So that's what is going to happen. Oh, that's what is already happening elsewhere. But while that we looked at was mainly for countries and industries, though I've showed you how it also affects you in terms of employment, in terms of inflation, I've showed you how it affects you. These are people that perpetrate these things did not stop there. They also thought of something for you and me. Non-carbon credits for industries and companies and countries, that's at that level. No, they wanted something specifically for you and me. So what did they think about? They thought about something called individual carbon footprint. And that was designed for individual carbon footprint to monitor your personal contribution to climate change. But perhaps before I delve into that, I'll let the group president of Alibaba, J. Michael Evans, elaborate more on this.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker.
So, in a nutshell, he says that they're developing technology that has the ability, that will give consumers the ability to measure their own carbon footprint. Technology, they're developing it, that you and I will be able to measure our own carbon footprint. How will they do that? By saying, where have you traveled? How have you traveled? We've talked about this before, that they'll be looking at, oh, you are going to from Kampala to Masaka? Okay, that's too far. How are you traveling there? If you are using a bicycle, that's okay. Your emissions are what? Are few, therefore for you are not in the gray zone. And how will they be able to do this actually? Perhaps to back up a bit. In this individual carbon footprint tracker system, they will give us individual carbon allowances. Say, like a clip I'll leave you at the end, they will say that each individual has a carbon allowance of 40 kilograms, that you're allowed to only pollute up to 40 kilograms per day. So if I want to go to Masaka, how much pollution will I be accountable for? If it's 50, then I can't go. Then it also comes down to now if I want to go and check on my friends in Nairobi, oh, that's even flying. Can I even afford it? I don't have that level of carbon allowances. Therefore, I can't go there. You have to consider your level of pollution and the allowances you have been given. It's like a child given an allowance in boarding school. You can't just spend anyhow. If your parent has given you the allowance of 100K for the entire term, you can't then start checking on expenditures beyond 100K. You can't look at, oh, this 150, I'll go for it. No, you can't go for it. You can't afford it. In essence, our way of life will not depend so much on how much we have. It will depend on the carbon allowances that we have. That if you want to go to point A, to travel to point X, you have to consider the pollution you're responsible for. Especially if you're using a petrol car, don't even bother. If it's out of the country, just sit down. If you're riding or walking there, then that's okay. Then they will have created an artificial jurisdiction for us to travel in. Of course, this will apply to us, but not to the essential workers. You saw that during COVID. And then they also said that they'll be tracking what we eat. So what we eat, we looked at previously when we talked about livestock emissions, that even the cows, these animals that we keep on the farm, they're responsible for emissions to a very great extent because they fat and burp. Therefore, if you are going to eat steak, my friend, you are polluting the environment. You have to look at how much am I polluting the environment by eating this steak. Therefore, you cut back on eating steak. But hey, they have you covered. They have lab-grown beef. Lab-grown beef, yes, for you. Now, lab-grown beef for it doesn't incur, you don't spend so much of your carbon allowance because lab-grown meat does not pollute the environment. They'll also be looking at what are you consuming on the platforms. Now that should be scared. On social media, what are you consuming? What are you looking at? Because, hey, these streaming companies also have a lot of back-end, emissions, data centers, and all that stuff that they engage in to bring you this content online. And therefore, if you're consuming that content online, hey, you're encouraging those companies to pollute the environment. Therefore, you're also responsible for that. So please shut down that Twitter, get off that social media, because you are encouraging the pollution of the environment by these companies. You get it? So they will be able to get to every aspect of our lives through these allowances. Now, I haven't yet seen if we can also buy carbon credits and enjoy our lives. Those who can afford. But for companies, there are carbon credits. You can buy carbon credits and still produce goods at a certain level. For countries, you can buy carbon credits from those who are conserving the environment, who are doing all these environmental things. Buy credit from them and continue with your life. On an individual level, I haven't seen that yet. But there's this that I picked up on the internet. This person, their bank was now telling them their estimated carbon footprint. How was the bank able to do this? Because of cashless. Because the bank now sees your transactions, it tells you, oh, you ate out. Oh, that steak that you paid for, that was 4 kilograms of carbon dioxide. Oh, you went shopping. How many sets of clothes did you buy? Oh, because that industry pollutes the environment and you bought those products from them, and you contributed 327 kilograms of carbon dioxide. Oh, you transport. Where did you travel? That's 1,398 kilograms of carbon dioxide you personally contributed to climate change. So there is this entire list that now, if you are given a carbon limit of 40 kilograms per day, what does that translate to per month? That's about 1,200 kilograms per month. Per month, stick within. So whatever you're doing, and whatever you're doing has to be within. How will it be within? Because all these products, all the things we engage in, all the things we buy will have carbon labels. That if you go to buy meat, it will have a carbon label on it. That, hey, if you're buying this kilogram of meat, yes, you're contributing 5 kilograms of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Oh, you're buying this shirt, it's this. If you're buying this, it's that. So you can also calculate your own. And like, hey, man, I've reached the threshold. I'm already at 1,000, kgs of carbon dioxide, and it's mid-month. So I'm only left with 200. 200 kilograms of credit allowances. So what do? You keep at home. So that's the kind of world these people want to create for us, apparently, as they build back better. That's the Great Reset. That's the new normal. A system of tracking, control, and punishment. Recently, in the UK, June this year, their government refused them to use AC in their home, while the temperatures were raging at 40 degrees Celsius. And they told them, don't use AC. Why? Because apparently the use of AC contributes 7% of carbon emissions. Therefore, stop using AC. However what it is, please just get a piece of paper and fan yourself. That's where we're reaching. And apparently local councils were tasked to go and monitor and tell people to put down the AC, the ACs from their houses. That's the kind of world they want for us, apparently under the guise of fighting climate change. So while we are talking about carbon markets and all these things in lofty languages, how people are gaining from it is coming to us personally through the carbon footprint tracker. They are not just checking the carbon they are not just tracking the carbon you are emitting or how much you are polluting the environment. No, they want to track, monitor you, then start to control you what you can do and you cannot do through these carbon allowances, and then they start to punish you if you dare exceed them. How will they punish you? When you go cashless, they'll be able to see and program your money and lock you out of your account that, hey, you have exceeded your carbon allowances, therefore your account is locked. It cannot transact anything. So you're buggered. That's the world they want to create for us. But if we don't resist these things today, if we don't wake up today, what then will tomorrow look like? Anyway, I'll leave you with this clip that you may observe and see what's happening elsewhere. This gentleman said that this is not about reducing carbon. It's about reducing you. And like we noted, it's rules for you, not for them. They'll keep flying their private jets. They'll keep buying their yachts. They'll keep owning their mansions, multiple mansions, multiple cars, fleets of cars, ACs blasting. And you will not be allowed to enjoy that. Rules for you, not for them. For them, they're essential. You are a non-essential. Watch this clip and see what's happening in the UK.
The UK recently completed a carbon credit system trial that sets a daily allowance for each person, a literal cap on your ability to travel, purchase food, clothing, and even heat your home, all rationed under the guise of saving the planet. Your daily carbon limit is capped at 40 kilograms of CO2, with food restricted to just 4 kilograms. So how does this translate to actual food? Well, according to the report, a packet of cheese accounts for 1.1 kilograms of CO2, over 25% of your daily allowance. Red meat? Forget it. If you spent your entire 4 kg allowance on steak, you'd get around 8 ounces of meat. While meat and dairy products have the highest carbon footprints, 2 slices of bread would account for just 3%, while a can of Coke just 4%. So basically, diabetes is on the menu. But don't worry, Big Pharma will have you covered, because medications and healthcare products will not be factored into your daily carbon limit. But here's where things get terrifying. They're not just suggesting it, they're testing it. Food manufacturers are already slapping carbon labels on their products. And let's not forget the food supply chain either. These policies directly threaten local farmers and producers as red meat gets penalized heavily, while synthetic lab-grown meat is being propped up as a solution. The fashion industry contributes approximately 10% of global carbon emissions, with much of the impact coming from production and transportation, which is now your problem. A single cotton t-shirt will cost you 2.1 kilograms of CO2. Synthetics will cost you much more, and if you'd like leather, just buy it now. But you can save those carbon credits by purchasing used clothes. So, how about travel? The average person burns through 2.3 kg per day going about their daily lives. However, if you ever see yourself going on vacation again, you're going to want to start biking or walking to work, because a typical round trip via airplane from London to New York emits approximately 1,600 kilograms of CO2 per person, equating to 80 days of your total carbon allowance under the PCA guidelines. Heating accounts for a significant share of household emissions, especially in colder climates, with the average household burning through 6 kg of CO2 per day. The recommended solution? Be cold, or fork over a bunch of money to install renewable energy sources in your home. There's also an allowance for leisure and entertainment. Streaming services, gaming, or internet usage at home or on your phone relies on data centers powered by electricity. So, that will cost you. Going to a concert or a ball game? Well, that involves travel, lighting, and heating or cooling. Boom, pay the toll. You like gardening, DIY projects, or recreational sports? Those all involve resource consumption, and there's no free lunch in the Credit Carbon world. Now, you might be thinking, surely this is just a trial. Wrong. This isn't just being tested, it's being planned. In the UK white paper, they openly admit that their goal is to encourage behavior towards implementing this system. They're normalizing the idea that your lifestyle is subject to bureaucratic quotas handed down by governments that live in luxury while telling you to eat less meat. Surprisingly, here's where it gets dystopian. The system isn't about reducing emissions where it matters. The report itself acknowledges that 70% of carbon emissions come from sectors beyond individual control, including industry, exports, and military operations. But instead of tackling those, they're coming after you. You see, this isn't about reducing carbon, it's about reducing you, restricting how far you can travel, what you can eat, and ultimately, how much freedom you can enjoy.